This is our geometry pre-algebra skills for chapter 3. So we're going to take a look at a linear equation, y equals mx plus b, and we're going to just pick apart the three different main pieces of this equation. We have our m, which is always representing the slope. Slope is rise over run. We can figure that out just by counting on a graph, or we can use an equation. B is a y-intercept. Usually everybody knows that B is a y-intercept, but they usually do not know what it looks like as a coordinate. It is always 0, b. So it's very helpful for you to make sure you know what it looks like in an xy coordinate. That brings me to my points x and y. My points x and y are just that. They are a random point on the line x, y. And you can have a lot of points because the definition of a line is just a series of dots that continue forever. So there are definitely infinite amount of points on the line. So when you are asked to write the equation of a line, you must substitute in values for your m and your b. So your equation is always going to look like this, with you filling in the circles, always. So if you are given a graph like we are with this one right here, the easy way to go ahead and write the equation out is just by counting our slope. So if I go ahead and I start at this point and I go rise over run, I'm rising 2 and I am running -3. So 2 over -3 is my slope. My y-intercept is right here. That's where it's touching the y-axis, and that is 0.02. So when I go to write the equation of my line, y equals -2/3 x plus 2. That is the equation of that line. That's the easiest one you are going to get, given the equation and a graph to look at. So what happens when you do not get the graph to look at as a visual and you're only given 2 coordinates of points and you're asked to write the equation of a line? Well, we can use our equation for slope, which is the difference of the y's over the difference of the x's. And I can go ahead and use that for these 2 coordinates. For anybody who typically messes up with their x and y, like I've been telling you before, a little helpful hint is to just put the x and y above the coordinates that we are looking at. So let's go ahead and start this. I'm going to have 2 minus -1 over 4 minus 3. And when I go ahead and complete this work, I am looking at a 3 over a 1. So my slope, we just figured out, is 3 over 1. So again, when we write the equation, we need the m and the b. So we are halfway there. We just found the m. So now all we have to do is go find the b. So I'm going to take my equation, y equals mx plus b, and I'm going to go substitute in everything that I know to find b. So you have choice right now. We have 2 points up here. We have 4 and 2 and 3 and -1. You need to select one. I'm going to just use the first one of 4 and 2. So that makes my y value 2. I already know my m because I just solved to get 3. And my x is going to be a 4. So now all it has become is algebra. So 2 equals 12 plus b. I subtract 12 on both sides, and I have b equals 10. Now that I have both pieces, I can go write my answer, y equals 3x plus 10. And there is the equation of the line that passes through points 4, 2, and 3, -1. So now you are getting an equation that is in standard form, and I'm going to ask you what the slope and the y-intercept is. So as long as you are confident in your algebra, this is not terrible. So I am going to start isolating my y, because if I isolate my y, it's going to be in the y equals mx plus b format. So I'm going to subtract 2x on both sides of the equation. I'm going to divide by -3. So that's going to leave me with 2/3 x plus 18 over -3. And my 18 over -3 works out very nice to be a -6. So now if they ask me my slope, I know my slope is 2/3, and I know my y-intercept is 0, -6. So now I'm going to give you a point and a slope, and I'm going to ask you to write the equation of a line y equals mx plus b. So I already know, the nice thing about this is I already know my slope. So I am 50% there. Now all I need is my b, and I'm finished. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to set up my formula. And all I'm going to do is substitute my values in to figure out what b is. So if I take a look at this equation, here is my x, here is my y, and where m is 2/3. So if I substitute in, I'm looking at a -2, a 2/3, and a -6. So when I go ahead and start doing the work here, 2/3 times -6 comes out to be a -4. And then when I go ahead and add 4 to both sides, I end up with b equals 2. So now I can come over here and finish my answer and get the equation of the line that is passing through point -2, -6, or -6, -2, and a slope of 2/3. So now I'm giving 2 points, and I have to come up with the equation of a line through 2 points. Well, in this example, I do not have my b or my m to start out, so I have to find both. So let's get started. I'm going to start by figuring out my slope, which is the difference of the y's over the difference of the x's. So I have -4 minus -3 over 6 minus 2. When I go ahead and simplify, I am looking at a -1 over a +4. So that is the slope of this line. Now I need to figure out my b. So I'm going to take my equation, y equals mx plus b, and we're going to go substitute all of our values in and solve for b. I'm going to just use the first point, 6, -4. You could use whatever one you want. It doesn't matter. So I have -4. I have a slope of -1 over 4, and my x value is 6. So I'm going to go ahead and start completing this. So you can leave this as -6/4 if you would like. You could also reduce this to get -3/2 if you like. It is your choice. All right. Some kids will even take it with the calculator and tell me it's a -1.5. That's fine too. Regardless of what you're doing, when you add a +1.5 to both sides, you're going to get a -2.5 for your b. So now I can come over here and I can write my final answer. Y equals -1/4 x minus 2.5 for your b. And you can leave your 2.5. You can leave it as 2.5 in fractions if you prefer. And you can also leave it as 5 over 2. It doesn't matter to me at this point as your mathematical preference. As long as the answer is correct, you will get full credit. Some other helpful things to know about the slopes of lines. If we end up having a horizontal line like we do in the first graph, this is a horizontal line that is crossing the y-axis at +3. This kind of slope for a horizontal line is going to equal 0. Because if I use my rise over run, I am rising nothing and I am running a number, and 0 over a number equals 0. So slopes of horizontal lines are always 0. So let's go to our vertical line. This is a vertical line intersecting the x-axis at -2. So for this one, my slope is going to be undefined. So if we go ahead and we do our rise over run, I am rising a number and I'm running 0. Well, anything over 0 is called undefined. That's where we're getting an undefined slope for. Now, the other thing that you need to remember is how to write the equations of parallel or horizontal and vertical lines. So when we're looking at a horizontal line and they ask you to write the equation, it is always going to be y equals a number, the number where we are crossing the y-axis. And for a vertical, it's always x equals a number, and it's where you're crossing the x-axis. So whenever I ask you to graph x equals a number, you should know right away what it looks like without hesitation. These are some helpful things for your slope that we're going to be using. When we look at graphs, we always read graphs from left to right. So if I am looking at a graph such as the first one, this has a positive slope. When you're reading from left to right, think about as if you were walking a mountain. We are walking upward in a positive direction, which brings me to the second graph. If we read this from left to right, it is going in a downward position. So this is going to have a negative slope. These are visuals that are going to help us to make sure we're checking our answers and that we have the slope correctly when we're counting with our rise over run so that we are not dropping any negative slopes. So at this time, I'm giving you 2 coordinate points, and I would like you to pause the video and come up with the equation of the line in y equals mx plus b format. So hopefully you have the correct answer, y equals x plus 2. Over here in pink, I used my slope formula, difference of the y's over difference of the x's, and I end up with positive 1. And then I end up substituting in, I use the first 0.13, and I end up with a value of 2 for b. So if you went ahead and you were successful of getting the equation of this line, the next step would always be to graph it. So I can go ahead and start with my y-intercept at positive 2. And since it has a slope of 1, my 1 is also 1 over 1 for rise over run. So I can count up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1, up 1 over 1. And here is the equation of my line. So we can go and do a full circle with whether it gives us the graph or points. We can come up with everything.